Okay, so we're talking about Shratzei Haaretz, those bugs that grow on the land or they crawl on the land. And that's what the Torah was osir, which means Sheretz HaShoretz Al Haaretz. By the way,
is above ground or inside?
Above ground? Doesn't make a difference. Doesn't make a difference. Above the ground, inside the ground, or even inside a fruit, as long as the fruit is still connected to the ground, to the tree. Anything that crawls inside it is Sheretz HaShoretz Al Haaretz. Now, what's the definition of Sheretz? I just want to mention this, that the Torah says the definition of Sheretz, Sheretz HaShoretz Al Haaretz, Rashi says, Sheretz HaOf Hemadakim HaNemuchim HaRochashim Al Haaretz כגון זבובים וצרעים ויתושים וחגבים, which means if you have very small creatures, those are shratzim. That's what Rashi says. Dakim hanemuchim, and also the rochashim al haaretz, which means they crawl on the ground. You don't see them walking, you see them crawling on the ground. Ramban over here argues on Rashi. He says that's not the definition of sheretz. Sheretz is something that goes on four legs. As it says here in the pasuk, sheretz haof haolech al arba, which means sometimes you have things that walk on 2 feet, and some things you have that walk on 4 feet and the head is to the ground. Whenever you have something that walks on 4 feet like that, that's considered sheretz. It has to be small as well. It's not a big thing. But he says the definition is not the size or the fact that you see them rochashim al haaretz, you don't see the legs. Rather, it means that it walks on 4 feet, the head is onto the ground. That's a definition of sheretz according to the Ramban. And therefore, for instance, you have a fly or you'll have a mosquito. When you see it walking on, when you see it walking on 4 legs or 6 legs, that would be sheretz.
Not a dog.
No, because that's a big thing. You see that it's very different. Also, it picks up his head. When it picks up his head, it doesn't go into that definition. So,
how about a rodent?
A what?
Rodent.
Anything that's small, the head is
Mouse.
on the bottom.
Well, that's too big.
You have a mouse, you have anything like that. It's walking on 4. So that goes under sheretz. Usually it means that the head should be facing the ground. Sheretz HaShoretz Al Haaretz. Let's see what the halacha says about Sheretz HaShoretz Al Haaretz. In halacha Daled on the bottom, Tolaim Agdelim Beperot Betalush. If you have those shratzim, tolaim, worms, or any other shratzim that grow on the fruits while they were disconnected from the ground, mutarim. They are permitted, which means you have now an apple, and you have inside it a sheretz, a bug, you're allowed to eat it. Now, don't get me wrong, if the sheretz is visible, and you can see it while you're biting it, so that is something that's disgusting, that would be under the issur of bal teshaketzu. Don't do disgusting things. But if it's small, that you don't pay attention to it, like many of the bugs we're talking about when we're talking about mites and aphids and bugs that are very small that you don't pay attention to unless you look for them very well, those things you're not going to violate bal teshaketzu. Since you don't notice them, you eat them like that. התולעים הגדלים בפירות בתלוש מותרים שלא אסרה התורה אלא שרץ השורץ על הארץ. Because the Torah says that it has to crawl on the ground. במה דברים אמורים שלא פירשו מן הפרי. That is long as the bug didn't leave the fruit. Once it's left the fruit, even though it comes back, let's say, it becomes davar asur. That is something that is important for us to know. Why? Because the poskim that want to permit different things based on this. For instance, I'll give you an example. How do you know if something is the bug grew while it was connected to and attached to the tree, or after you took it off? We don't know normally, unless you know the species of that fruit, and you say, "Oh, I know those are always get the bugs after I detach them from the fruit from the tree." Fine. But the halacha says, in halacha zayin, pri she'etliya ve'en yaduim b'mechubar or b'talush, if you don't know, it's asur. Why? We're talking about safek deoraita, one should take it to the lechumra.
So according to Halacha, if any bug is formulated from the long time storage, it's okay to
No,
use?
because whenever it's formulated after it was detached from the ground, it's asur. Oh,
No, it should
it's
be
mutar. I'm sorry. It's mutar. But when it's formulated in a place like that, let's say you have flour,
Yeah.
let's say you have rice, let's say you have something like that. What happens over there? The bugs are formulated in there, it becomes infested, and then those bugs are starting to walk around there. There is a machloket if it starts walking, but it's still within the rice, it's still within the flour. If it's considered like it left its parash, as we said over here in the halacha, that it kol zman shelo pirshu min apri, is that considered that it came out or not? There's a tzad to say that it didn't come out, because you see that the flour is still here, the bugs are inside, they didn't come out. Or there's another tzad to say that since it walked from one let's say it's rice, one grain of rice to another grain of rice, that's considered, like it says over here, that it goes from one fruit to another fruit, although it didn't leave and walked on the ground, that would be asur. This is a machloket that's brought down in the Rishonim and in the Achronim. Mostly in the Achronim, he says like this. The halacha is brought down in the following way.
You're saying then that if the bug stayed on the same grain of rice, that it's okay?
I'm not saying yes. If it stayed on the same grain of rice on the outside, you're saying.
Yeah.
Right now we're talking that it's inside the fruit. Let's say such a thing grew on top of the fruit. Is that mutar or that's asur? That's also another machloket. And I'll show you. It says like this. אם תולעת מצויה בצידו החיצוני של פרי תלוש, which means it never left the fruit, but it stayed on top of the fruit, not inside, on the outside. There are poskim that say that it's mutar, and it's brought down in the Aruch HaShulchan, תולעים הגדלים על גבי הפרי, כל ערימת הפירות נחשבת כפרי אחד, and it would be mutar. חזון איש says such a חילוק, אם דרך התולעת לצאת מעל הפרי לפרי אחר, אסורה, מקום חיותה הוא על הפרי, לא נאסרה. This is how the חזון איש brings down. And it's brought down also in the Pri Megadim. He brings down תולעת שנמצאת על גבי הפרי. The fruit is on top of the bug is on top of the fruit. And דינה כפירש, it's not considered like it left the fruit. So we see there are opinions like that, although the Shach doesn't say like that. Shach says that it's considered asur. Kreti or Pleti also says that the milbin are those mites, very small mites, לא שייך כלל שם הפירשו, cause כל עניינם לרכוש, לנוד ולנוע מיד, הרי הם נידונים כפרוש ועומד, and therefore if it's on top of that, it will be considered דבר asur. And therefore if it's on the grain itself, it would never left that grain of rice, it would be machlok if it's mutar or asur. Nafka mina for us, maybe you can make over here spake afterwards. Secondly, even if it left from one grain to another grain, there are poskim that bring down that such a thing would be permitted. Why? Because as long as it's within that grain of rice, right, everything together, or if it's inside the flour, all that would be mutar. Okay? That is one thing we want to learn. Secondly, we want to say the following. What happens if it grew inside and it died, and afterwards you open it and it comes out? That is also machloket rishonim if it's mutar or asur. Rashi brings down that it would be mutar because Rashi says that it says in the Gemara pirsha and afterwards meta, which means the bug has to walk. It needs to be shoretz and walk out in order for it to be asur. The Ramban doesn't say like that. Pay attention. This is machloket Shulchan Aruch and the Rema. Does a bug need to walk in order for it to become davar asur? Or is it asur even without walking? According to the Shulchan Aruch, the only time a bug is asur if it actually crawled. Because it says in the Torah that it needs to be shoretz, which means it needs to walk. The Shulchan Aruch learns that if it didn't walk, it's mutar. As long as it didn't walk, it's mutar. He says like this, תולעים הגדלים בפירות בעודם במחובר. Those worms that grow within the fruits while it's attached to the tree, חשוב כשרץ הארץ, ואסור. He walked inside, it's אסור. שלא פירש, אף על פי שלא פירש. והוא שריחש, that's only if it started walking. But if it didn't walk, you see that it didn't have the room to walk. It's it's sitting inside a very, very narrow place that didn't have the room to walk. He says the Shulchan Aruch, it's Vav, that it's mutar. The Rama says that it's asur. Asur. What's the halacha? Ben Shai brings down in Kaf HaChaim says that we should be pochsek over here like the Rama lechumra, that it should be davar asur. And the way the Kaf HaChaim writes is because we're dealing with the Isur Deoraita, one should take it lechumra. Chacham Ovadia says that it's not so. Rather, whenever the Shulchan Aruch is posek halacha, we go exactly like the Shulchan Aruch. We don't have to be machmir against the words of the Shulchan Aruch. Now, Ben Ish Chai, when he writes those things, he says that the minhag in Baghdad is to be yoser. Okay, if there's a minhag, then minhag goes before the psak of the Shulchan Aruch. That's how the Shulchan Aruch writes. Shulchan Aruch writes in the Akdama to the Bet Yosef that everything that is going to be posek in his Shulchan Aruch is only if the minhag is not so. But if there is a minhag, a custom of a place that's already noheg in a certain way, so then the minhag comes before everything. So in Baghdad, the minhag used to be yourself fine. Chamavadah says, otherwise it should be davar mutar.
So according to Mechaber, we don't need to sift the flour before use.
Oh, 1 minute. He's not speaking over here about such things. He's talking about did it actually start moving or not? Did it walk or not? If it walked within the fruit, right, and the fruit was connected to the ground, it's rechesh arochesh al haaretz, sheretz ashoretz al haaretz. If it's al haaretz, which means it's still attached to the ground or to the tree, then it becomes but it needs to be walking. It's not needs to start walking. But if it's so tiny, so small that it didn't start walking yet, it's davar mutar.
So I didn't get my answer. The flour.
The flour is inside. They walk. The question is, do you look at it as that? Do you look at it as one big thing, or do you say?
It's one big thing.
Oh, so that's a machloket. Do you look at it as one big thing, and therefore it didn't leave, or and it's detached, so therefore it's not asur, it's not sheretz ashoretz al haaretz, or do we say that since it's walking from one to another inside the flour, it should be davar that's asur. Lechora over here, since we're dealing with the Safek Deoraita, again we have to be machmir, and on this the Shulchan Aruch didn't tell us his opinion. Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid in Israel, we used to buy rice and spread it on the table and take out the worms.
Oh, so that is true. When it used to be that rice were very infested, and therefore, and also flour, they were very infested. Today, the industry makes sure, the rice and the flour industry makes sure that what they sell is completely clean. In rice, if you ever check rice for Pesach, you hardly find any bugs in it. It's also not, it's almost unheard of to find, but very, very rare, which makes it less than miuta matsui. That's why the poskim this year said you don't have to check rice 3 times, right? They said 1 time. Why? Why? Because 1 time just to make sure. There's no, not even for the bugs, for the other things, for Pesach we're talking about. And what about flour? You'll see that in Eretz Israel, everybody's sifting their flours. I'm not sure what's going on in Eretz Israel, but over here, I asked the strictest mashgichim in the field, and they said the flour is completely clean. You don't need to sift it. When I say this to women, they it's a chidush by them, because they grew up sifting flours. And when I asked them the question, okay, very good, you sift flours, did you ever find anything? So you'll find in a crowd that one lady will say, yeah, I found a couple of times. Good, if you find a couple of times in your life after sifting hundreds of times, that's less than miuta matzu. You're not required. You want to be machmir? No. You want to be machmir. Whenever you machmir, by the way, don't make it on the family's count, right? If your children right now need to eat, you need to make food, or you need to sift the flour, So don't sift the flour right now. Make food for your children. Your husband is home, he needs a little bit of attention, right? The husbands need attention, right? And you sitting sifting flowers, so make sure you don't sift the flour now. If you have extra time, who has extra time today in New York? But if you have extra time, fine. But it's a chumrah, you're not required to do that.
So that rice that I'm talking about would be isur.
At that era, at that time, it would be, you will have
But you
to,
have no other
right?
rice.
Today we're talking about a totally different world. Today, whenever you buy something, it's so clean. The rice, it goes through such cleaning that it's completely something
Right,
else.
but
He's asking
when the
back
shu-
then. He ate
Back then, definitely. Once something is infested, and we already categorize this, that's something that's muhzak, which means if you find every time in the bag, you'll find a bug, it's called infested, right? The question is, do you go after a bag, you go after a batch, you go after a mill? Machloket, achronim, what exactly you go in order to define miut hamatzui, which means miut hamatzui would be less, we said about 10%, some say more, some say less, but if you have something that every time you'll find a bug, then it's considered muhzak, it's infested, and before eating it, you are obligated midin Torah to clean it. If you didn't clean it, you violated Isur Torah. If it's miut hamatzui, which means it's unlikely to find over there, rather the likelihood is about 10%, some say 2%, we've already categorized Mishkanot Yaakov 10%, or Shlomo Zalman says it's good to go according to that opinion. Cham Ovadia seems to hold much bigger than that amount according to the Rivash. We said that Rav Eliashiv said something around 2 and 3%, Rav Nisim Kollel is less than that, Rav Shevet HaLevi had a different understanding of how to count miut hamatzui. But if you have miut hamatzui, then you are obligated to clean it mid'Rabbanan, and if you didn't and you ate it, you violated the Isur D'Rabbanan. And if you have less than that, then you don't have to clean it at all. The Ben Ish Chai in Torah Lishma says, what happens if you take an apple, you bite into it, you didn't check, you bite into it, and you see all of the sun left over there, you swallowed it, and you see left the leg of a big bug, right? And you know, now you have to do tshuva. Did you violate the Isur? Where you standing? Says the Ben Ish Chai that you didn't do anything wrong. Why? Because since an apple or anything in that category, something that's not even miut hamatzui, the likelihood of having bugs in an apple is 1 out of I don't know what, but it's not even close to be common, right? So therefore, you don't need to check the apple before eating. There is a Chayei Adam that says before eating anything, look at it. Fine, you look at whatever you eat. Don't just put it in your mouth. Look at what you eat. Chayei Adam says as a ma'ala, as a midat chasidut, not even as an obligation. But these are the categories of things. There is something muhzak, miut hamatzui, less than miut hamatzui, less than miut hamatzui. Chayei Adam says, look at it and then eat it. But you don't have to go and searching for the bug.
Change your bracha then.
Yeah.
How about spices?
What's the bracha
Spices.
for a
The
bug?
spices is its own category. We'll have to speak about that. That comes into a totally different.
It's interesting that you mentioned flour. This morning, my wife went to buy flour, a brand that we normally buy.
Right.
She opened the bag and she saw little bugs crawling around
Oh.
inside.
Oh.
So she went back to the store. She told them they opened up a whole bunch of other ones. There's a future date on it. It's not expired
Oh.
or anything, and they all had it. So it was an entire
Right.
batch.
So you could have such a thing if it's stored poorly in a hot place,
Especially in the summer months.
and that's not what we're talking about. If you buy something that was stored fine and the expiration date is way ahead of where we're standing, you don't have to worry about that. But you will find such a thing sometimes if it's not stored that way. Okay? So this is what we're talking about over here. Now, where the nafkamina of everything let's put it into practicality. Halakha lema'aseh. There's something called raisins. Raisins, people used to eat all the time until they came and told us that raisins are also infested, which means there are bugs on the raisins. Where do the bugs come from? So we have to see exactly. But you'll need Raisins is grapes that were dried. Now the Taz here brings down he speaks about raisins openly, and he says that those raisins are permitted. The reason they're permitted, says the Taz, is because, in Sif Katan Yud Roseni, which means the raisins, they are permitted. Why? Because you have over here sfeika, two sfekot. One safek im yasham milbim ktanim. One safek, do they have the mites, the small mites? Or maybe there isn't. And the second safek, he says over here, is maybe those mites, those milvin, grew within the raisin after it was detached from the place that grow, right? You took everything down, you put them on the floor, and maybe it started growing within over there. So therefore, because of that, you have over here two sfekot, two doubts. One safek, maybe it was there, maybe not. Maybe it's clean. Maybe there's nothing there. You don't see anything. Second safek, even if it's not clean, maybe it's a bug that's permitted. That's what the Taz says. According to that, Rabelsky allows eating raisins, and this is the policy of the OU. But others feel that this halakha doesn't apply today. Why not? Because they say that raisins are infested. Why? Because you put the raisins on the floor to dry. You put over there all kind of sheets, and you put it by the sun. Naturally, you don't do it home. Naturally, you have bugs that flying into it, crawling into it, and therefore they are full of bugs, and they die over there as well. Why do they attract bugs? Because they're very sweet. Raisins are very sweet. Secondly, you don't have the second safek that maybe grew inside, maybe not, because we're not talking about bugs that grow within the raisin. They come from outside. So therefore, you don't have any of these two sfekot. What's halacha lemase? Many of the poskim would say don't eat raisins. Like for instance, Rav Moshe Vaya says, don't eat raisins unless you know it's clean. Unless you know it's clean, or you make it at home. You can make raisins at home, right? Which means you take grapes and you put it inside the oven. I was told that if you take grapes, you put them inside the oven, overnight, you'll have yourself good raisins. Tried it at home. Didn't work for me. I don't know, I'm not such a good cook. But when we're talking about the raisins, not everybody would say you should take a strict approach, as we said from Rabelsky. But if you take a look at the Lachani from Rav Revach, he writes that it depends what kind of raisins. Some raisins are dried within ovens, so then it will be mutar. Some raisins, although they dried outside on the field, but they cleaned so well that you're not going to find anything in them. How do you find in raisins bugs? You take the raisins, you separate one from the other, you put it in warm water, and you wait 10-15 minutes, it's going to rise to the top. I tried also that, and I didn't find. What's the reason? Could be that the boxes I tried were clean. Could be. But anyway, this is how you find the bugs in raisins. This is how the Sfarim bring down.
Why on the raisin? Any
dry
fruit should be the same law.
Well, I guess other dried fruits you'll be able to see. Like you take apricot, you'll see very clearly what's on top of the apricot. If you see a black dot, and within time you get to know what's this black dot. Is it only a stain from the sun, from a leaf, and you'll be able to tell. But that is pretty much clear. When you're talking about raisins, they have a color that the bugs are camouflaged in them. Okay, so that's more problematic.
How's the OU take?
The OU is relying on this Taz, as Rav Belsky says, that there is fake sfeka. Now, this fake sfeka comes up in Halacha and Shulchan Aruch in other places that you can use as well. Like for instance, when we're talking about something that's considered mi'ut hamatzui, says the Shulchan Aruch, he brings a Rashba, something that's considered mi'ut hamatzui, which means less than the amount we explained before, less than the majority, or about 10% or less than that, whatever we categorize, and you will cook them, then it becomes against fake sfeka. What's this fake sfeka? Safek, maybe there's a bug, maybe not. And even if there was a bug, maybe by cooking it, you broke the limbs of the bug, and it's not a birya anymore. The only isur is because it's considered a birya. And the Shulchan Aruch says birya means a whole creature. The Shulchan Aruch writes in Siman Kuf, in Ilchot Ta'arovot, that birya afilu be'elef lo batel, which means you have something very small within a mixture, a ta'arovet, it's not going to be batel as long as it's fully tacked. But when you cook it, that could be that it got broken up, and therefore that would be permitted. That is the halacha in the Shulchan Aruch. That's openly in the Shulchan Aruch from the Rashba. Shach brings down like this. יש כאן שתי ספקות, it's a שח in סימן כ"ט, סימן קטן כ"ט, יש כאן שתי ספקות, ספק כי היה שם רחש או לא, one ספק, maybe there was a bug, maybe not, we're talking about מיעוט המצוי, ואם תמצא לומר היה, even if you say there was, שם הנימוח ונתבטל. Maybe it was נתבטל by breaking up or disintegrating, and you don't have it anymore, you don't know, maybe yes, maybe no, ספק. Rabbi says that from his experience you cook, nothing happens to the bug. That's what he says from his experience. So basically, I'm not sure how it's working out well with this shach that says it becomes a safek. He says maybe if you cook it for a very long time, maybe that's what he means. But that's what he says, that from his experience, it doesn't break up. Now, where's the nafkamina for us? Nafkamina for us is, for instance, if you cook something in unfiltered water. I had many times that women call me, "Oh, we made a cake in water that was unfiltered. We forgot. What should we do right now? Can we eat the cake? Oh, I made food. I made soup. I made something else, and I forgot that I need to filter the water. Or I went to a friend and I made it over there, and she doesn't filter the water. I just realized afterwards. Can you permit such a thing or not?" And we explained that the isur of the bugs are also under miut hamatzui. Most houses in New York don't have not bed bugs, don't have water bugs, right? Which means you can go into one house, open the faucet, and you'll have over there the bugs, and you can go around the block, and over there you're not going to have them. Even sometimes one house yes, and the neighbor not. The way it was explained to me, something along those lines, that there are big pipes and small pipes. The big pipes go on the big avenues, right? And over there, the stream is much stronger.
The water mains.
And then
The water.
Yeah, it's called.
Mains are called the water mains.
oh, water mains, right? And then you have the smaller pipes that go into the streets, into the houses. So what happens? Those bugs go with the mainstream, and now when he has to make a detour into the house, that doesn't take together with it the flow of the bugs. If that's true or not true, that's the way I recall understanding it. But the fact is that some houses have them, and around the corner you're not going to have them. And most of the houses don't have them in New York. Rav David Feinstein said that it's under miut hamatzui. Now, once it's miut hamatzui, we said over here, if you cooked it already, it would be considered sfeka. Maybe there was a bug, maybe there wasn't. And even if there was a bug, could be that it was broken up and disintegrated and you don't have it anymore. Those that are mumchim, the experts in the bugs in the water, saying that usually to take care of the bug and to break it, it takes half an hour of boiling. So therefore they want to say that if you have an urn and the urn didn't cook the water for half an hour, the bugs could be still there. The only thing is, usually when you have an urn, it's not fresh water, it's water that you had, that you filled from a few days ago, and they don't last that long anyway. So if you just boil the water and you're using it right now, maybe you can say it's such a claim. But water that stayed there for a while, or it's boiled itself again and again, that, right, as those water urns do, then something that should be allowed to use.
Yeah, today we have a trend of organic fruits and organic, which they don't use pesticides.
Right. Right.
So there's more chance of.
Absolutely.
So stay away from organic.
No, I'm not saying you should stay away. Anything you want to buy, you buy and you clean. You don't need to stay away from anything. Everything you could learn how to clean and make sure that
Even
you're eating clean things.
Strawberries? You can
Strawberries also. We showed in a shiur how to
Very hard
clean
to check
strawberries.
with
And we
crevices.
explained, I told you that I asked Rabbi, why is it that he's not allowing rubbing the strawberry the way I explained from the OU and from Avreva? And he said that from his experience, it's not 100%. Now, it does say in the Shulchan Aruch that once something is infested, you have to take care of it 100%. You can't clean 99%, 100%. But could be that cleaning in such a way is 100%, and the likelihood of finding something is very, very small, and therefore one doesn't need to be machmir with that. And therefore, if one does it correctly and he rubs it well, it should be permitted. We said that the water should be permitted if it was cooked b'di'evet. L'chatchila you can't do such a thing, right? L'chatchila we're telling you that the chiyuv of miut hamatzui is to make sure you have a chiyuv bdika. Make sure that you check and you clean your water. Once it was done b'di'evet, you didn't know, you made a mistake, a neighbor brought you the cake, they didn't know that they have to filter. You thought your water was filtered, and you found out that the filtering is not so good, it was too old, so then you can permit what you have. Another question that we can resolve with this idea that we're saying over here is the question of the corn on the cob. Very big question. Corn on the cob, years ago already, were known to be infested with thrips and mites and aphids. And one time I checked corn on the cob. I was together with Rabbi Goldstein, and I cut off the way you check them to make sure that it's clean. You have to remove all the kernels with a knife. When you cut them correctly, everything comes out. You put them on some kind of mash or something else like that, a strainer, and you wash them. And once you wash them, afterwards you spill everything like we did by the thrip cloth, and everything comes out, and the water stays together with some dirt that was left, stays on the mash. And we found over there a real worm, like a big worm like this. So I asked him, how could that be? Doesn't make sense. How could that size hide inside the kernels? So big, it was big. So he told me that he asked this question from Avaya, and Avaya told him, you don't ask questions on worms. That's it. Which means they have such a body that they can hide in such places. They could sneak in there. If anybody saw ever all kind of movies about mice can go inside a hole that's small as a pin. Not literally, but the size of a pencil maybe. They could somehow sneak into things within very, very small holes. They have such a body that they can go in there. It's the same thing with those worms. Now, when you check the corn this way, you'll find that corn has bugs in it. So the question is, what category is it? Is it considered muchzak or miut hamatzui? What's the nafka mina? Nafka mina is if you cooked it, can you eat it or you can't eat it? Once you have a chiyuv bdika, you're going to have to check it. But what happens if you cooked it already? Can you eat it or you can't eat it? Somebody serves you, here's a corn on the cob. We just cooked it. Can you eat it or not? So if you say that it's muchzak, Ravaya says that it's 90% muchzak. 90% of corns have bugs. So if that's true, you can't eat it. But from my experience checking corns over and over and over again, I didn't find that it's muchzak, it's miut hamatzui. I told you that in a package of 3, I usually find 1 thrip. That's what I found. So I asked Ravaya, if that's the case, I asked Ravaya and I asked also Rav Reva. If that's the case, maybe over in America, it's different. If that's the case, you'll be able to cook the corn and eat it. You have a sveka, miut, and together with that also the fact that it's cooked, right? Or even better, you put it on a fire to roast it. You roast it, anything that's there becomes burnt. And the Shulchan Aruch brings down in the end of Pei Dalet that sheretz saruf, burnt bug, mutar leochlo, mishum refuah de'afra be'alma. It's allowed to eat it for refuah, if you need it for medicine. But, the Chayei Adam explained, that's only if you take the bug and eat it as is, you're planning and you're intending to eat the bug. But if you don't intend to eat the bug, rather you eat it together with something else and there's a burnt bug over there, Chayei Adam says it's mutar. That would be the way you can permit today to eat the nourishits. The nourishits, that's the seaweed of the sushi. They have in there all kind of things that collected on the nourishits, all kind of seahorses and spiders and all kind of things that collect on them, and they iron them.
Fish also.
Okay, so they iron them, and now you're eating those things. How could you eat those things? So the way to permit it, that's how they permit it. I asked the OU. They said this is the way you permit it because it's considered sheret saruf because they iron it, and when they iron it, anything that's there is burnt. And since you don't mean to eat that, you want to eat the nourishit. You don't mean to eat the bug. Therefore, the Chai Adam would permit it.
Even bria order?
Well, it's not a birya anymore, but such a thing, although let's say you would be able to look and see it.
Nobody intends to eat the bug.
Exactly.
Obviously, you know.
Oh, that's right.
You
But
never know.
normally when you have a bug, that's a sur even if it's not your intention. But when it's burnt, it would be mutar only if it's refuah, it says over here. But that is only when you eat the bug with intention to eat the bug. For refuah, let's say the doctor said you must eat those worms, you have to take them, barbecue them, put them on a fire, make them into ashes and eat them. Then it says over here it's mutar. But to eat it for otherwise, you want to snack on them like they do in Chinatown, right? They send a bunch of pounds like this, you want to snack on them, that you can do, it says over here. But when you have it with something else and you're not intending to eat it, then it would be something that's mutar. So therefore, when we come back to the nourishits, that would be mutar. When we come back to the corn on the cob, let's say you put it on the fire, you roasted it. Would that be davar hamutar? Would that be davar hamutar? So I asked Rabbi this. Rabbi told me that from his experience, we said that also in America, it's infested. That's what he said. Rav Revach didn't answer that the way. He said that it's true, could be it's not, but we machmir on the sfeik sfeika. That's what he says. I don't know why we machmir on the sfeik sfeika when you have over here Shulchan Aruch that doesn't say like that, but again, Shulchan Aruch says b'di'evet, if you did it. It doesn't say lechatchila you could do it. But another thing is the Chayei Adam says, as I explained to you, that roasting the corn, he specifically speaks about corn. He says roasting the corn doesn't affect the bug. So therefore, if it doesn't affect the bug, it's still asur. And cooking the corn, Rabbi said, that also doesn't affect the bug. The bugs are hiding within the corn, and nothing happens
What
to
about
them.
frozen?
Frozen, we'll speak about frozen. 1 second. Frozen, we said already, is worse than not frozen. We explained that frozen, the problem with frozen is that they freeze within the whatever you do, except when we're talking about cabbage, they freeze there and they stuck in there. They still hanging, they're still holding on to it, clinging to it in such a way that you can't remove them anymore because you froze them. That's worse. But before we're getting to that,
I know the strawberries and berries are really
1 minute
blend
before
up.
we go, let's finish up with the corns.
Yeah.
What happens with the corns? The corns, Horaa in his Sefer Tolat Shani, that they tried in some of the companies in Israel to take precautions and find best machinery in order to make sure that that they would grow the corn in the best way that the bugs would not get into them, right? And secondly, the machinery would work in such a way that it would peel all these leaves that's on top of the corn instantly, right away, all at once, and at the same time clean the corn. What happens to those bugs in the corn? As soon as you start peeling the fresh corns, they go into hiding between the kernels. And Rabbi writes in his Sefer that if you want to see them, take away the peel very quickly, all of them at once, and you'll see them, you'll be able to see them going and hiding between the kernels. I never saw it, could be again, but because we over here maybe don't have such an infestation like they do in Israel, could be. But 1 minute, but they go in there, so therefore they bought a machinery like that would peel it all at once and boom, clean it together, and that would solve all the problems. First of all, the way they grow them, secondly, the way they clean them, and he writes over there that in testing they saw that it's not necessarily clean, and therefore they didn't go ahead with it. And therefore, eating corns is davar that becomes problematic. That's how Rav Eliashiv writes in his Sefer Ashreish. And this is how the Elkut Yosef wrote in the old editions, although he came back saying that it's not so, and then he retracted again. But Lemaise, all the Sfarim bring down that it is infested, and today even Rav Yitzhak Yosef agreed that it's infested. So maybe you have such a solution that I said right now to cook the corn for a long time until some limbs break. But Ravaya said that not necessarily that it helps, and again, roasting them also, the Chayei Adam said that not necessarily that it helps. If you take a look at Israel Fisher, Dan Fisher, he speaks about all kind of green leaves that they have to serve in certain big places like nursing homes and places like that, and they asked them how should they eat those leaves. They must give it over. That's part of the requirement from the government to give such a nutritious meal to their people. So he came up with an idea that you should put it in an oven for a certain amount of time. I don't remember how many minutes. And with that, you do minor cleaning, put them over there, and with that you can allow it because the bugs were burnt over there. Ravaya writes on this that from his experience, nothing happens in such a short time to the bugs, so he doesn't really understand what Diane Fisher wrote. But we have over here some kind of understanding. If one wants to be lenient in such a way, maybe you could rely on that. You might ask me, but the Shulchan Aruch says only b'di'evet you could do, so if you did it, you can allow it, but not lechatchila. So there is some of the poskim that bring down, I think I saw it in Shlomo Kluger, in Tuv Tam Vedat, I think over there, that if you have some kind of fruit or food or species or something that if you're not going to permit it, it's going to be completely asur, so you have to be done such a thing like a b'di'evet. So over here, if you say to people, don't eat any more corn on the cob, what are you going to say? Cut the kernels, eat them like they sell them in the cans. People don't like it like this. It doesn't taste the same. It's not enjoyable. Kids want to eat it on the cob. It's a different kind of thing. So therefore, maybe you can have yourself some kind of idea how to be mekel. The fact that you can't forbid it completely, and since over here could be it's considered miuta matzui, and since you cook it for a long time or you roast it well, you can allow saying this fake of the Rashba. Again, the poskim that I spoke to didn't agree that this should be permitted. Yes, questions?
Yes, the strawberries and the berries are blended to make a shake.
Okay, so we'll speak about that in a second. Anybody about the topic we spoke about?
Yes.
Clean it to bring to miuta matzui and then cook it.
Okay, so we said over here that anything that's considered already either muchzak or even miuta matzui, the Rashba says you have to bring it to nothing, which means you have to make sure that it's completely clean. Now you want to say that maybe you should go ahead and cook it like that. Yeah, but the sfek over here, it seems like from the Shulchan Aruch that you can't create that sfek lechatchila, only it's a b'di'evet. Sfek in large, not necessarily you could make sfek lechatchila. Poskim bring down a big discussion if you can make sfek lechatchila. Any other questions?
Yeah, about corn. In America, the corn industry is well developed, and they genetically modify the corn to give off the natural pesticide to ward off the bugs. So
you say maybe that's why it's more clean.
yeah,
Okay, I don't know. Maybe that's true. Okay, maybe that's true.
If you barbecue the corn, doesn't it like die off completely, even though it goes all
So
the way
that's what I
inside?
was thinking. That once you put it on the fire, it would get burns from the heat. But Chayei Adam says it doesn't. He says from his experience, and Avaya also writes from his experience, those when you burn something, nothing happens to it. It's in full tact. More in the corn before we go into the berries. Okay, berries. When we're dealing about berries, strawberries or not necessarily that, even all kind of green leaves, small leaves, you want to make a juice out of it. So you need to know that you can't just take it and put it in a blender, right? Even if you put it in a good blender, which means it's going to completely it all, still you're not allowed to do it in order to just get rid of the bugs. Why? Because we have a halacha in Shulchan Aruch that en mevatlim isur lechatchila, which means once you have a isur, you can't get rid of it. And this is a very, very important halacha, that one is not allowed to take something that's asur and be mevatel. This is how it's brought down in Siman Tzadik Tet Seif Hey. En mevatlim isur lechatchila, and therefore, if you want to just get rid of the bug, you're not allowed to do such a thing. But the Taz brings down here, and the Shach in Pei Daled, and all the Achronim, that if your intention is not to be mevatel the isur, rather you have a different idea in mind. You will really want a juice. You want the juice. You want to make yourself a strawberry juice. You want to make yourself something like that. So therefore, that's not considered en mevatlim isur lechatchila, because you mevatel for something else and not for getting rid of the isur, and therefore it will be permitted. But although it will be permitted, the Achronim say that that's only if you make sure that the first you clean it as much as you can. And that comes back to your question before. Can you bring it down to a very low level that it's almost completely clean? Not necessarily miut hamatzui, but could be a safek miut hamatzui, or less than that. It becomes already not miut hamatzui, which means you cleaned it very well. But since if you have something and you want to eat it, you have to make sure it's 100% clean. Together with that, that although over here it's not 100% clean, but since you're not eating it the way it is, rather you're going to put it on a blender or something like a turbo, something that's going to make sure that it completely crushed, because I told you that the thrips have a very strong body, that if you try to crush them, it's very hard. So therefore, if you put it on a very good blender, then it will be permitted. So you have to do two things. First of all, you have to clean it well. And secondly, after you clean it well, you can make the juice like that. Fine? Yeah.
Am I allowed to buy strawberries, blueberries when you go to visit someone, and if you know that they might not clean well?
Oh, so first of all, blueberries, not necessarily the infested. Blueberries, you could categorize them into two. One is the wild, and secondly, the cultivated. Those that are cultivated, they are taken care of, and they are normally clean. Normally clean. All you have to do before you're eating them is take a look that you don't see that there's a worm inside. You'll see some kind of hole. You see indication to it.
How do you know if it's cultivated or wild?
It says on it normally. It says on the box. If it's wild, then it has more of a problem. Some say that you need to cut them and check inside because they are already badly infested.
All of them? Or 10%?
They're considered infested, so it's not 10%. I can't tell you it's all of them, but there's a problem. That is when we're talking about blueberries. But when we talk about raspberries or blackberries, these are problematic because they are infested. You talk about strawberries, they are infested, no question about it. All those are infested. So therefore the question he's asking is, can you buy this for somebody? You're going to be now a guest by somebody's house. You want to bring him something for Shabbat. You bring a pack of strawberries or blueberries, not blueberries, blackberries or raspberries. Can you give him something like that? The answer is no, you're not allowed. Of course not. This is called Lifnei Ver Lo Titen B'Shol. If you don't know that he's going to clean them well, you're not allowed to give something to somebody that might eat them the way it is. That's Davar Ha'asur. Huh?
Even if they ask you for it, like...
Even if they ask you for something, if you think they're going to clean it,
bring it clean
or...
to them.
Yeah, you can clean it yourself.
Yeah, clean yourself.
Or you can ask them, are they going to clean it, or demand that they're going to clean it. But otherwise, you can't give somebody something that's asur. Yeah.
Chocolates.
It's mukzat. You know they're gonna wash it at least once, and then you're gonna eat it, and they're gonna
Well,
bring it to mutamatsu. At least that. Can you rely at least on that to bring it?
No, because you're asking, can you give somebody a isur de Rabbanan? That's what you're asking. The answer is no.
In the case of the smoothie, it's like over there. What's the way I would clean the strawberry?
Right,
Before
same
I
way
put
we
it
just
in-
explained right now.
Just
If you
in a
want to
plain
do an
way,
excellent
just
job,
plain or-
if you want to do an excellent job, you do what I told you. you soak them in soap water for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and you agitate it inside, and then use a strong stream of water to wash them, and under the stream of water take a sponge or a brush and brush them. Things should come down and you're not going to have anything in them. If you do that, you can eat it the way it is. If you didn't do that much, you could still blend it as soon as you cleaned it very, very well. Even without that technique, you'll need to afterwards blend it very well.
Even without the soap, just cleaning it with a brush. When you go to the blender.
This
Yeah.
process you're describing, I'm sorry, will it alter the outside of the strawberry?
No,
The look of it?
no. If you're getting a fresh strawberry that's strong and good, grade A, nothing will happen to it. If you're getting something mushy, then just touching it will make it, yeah.
So
I'm just wondering if it's limited to fruits or let's say chocolates or candy or processed food or anything like that.
So
how do we check chocolate?
So Rabbi brings down also all these items, everything, and normally you don't have problems with chocolate or anything like that, but something that was stored in a bad way, right? Poorly stored, or if you have chocolate that you have inside raisins, so you go into the question of raisins. You have strawberry you have chocolate that has something else that's problematic. You run into those questions of those things.
And how do we know the mesh removed all the bags?
How do we know?
The mesh we do.
Yeah.
With the water. They remove all the bags. What is the proof?
Oh,
They're gonna remove all the
no,
bags?
you never know 100% anything.
Yeah,
but
the base way they say
Going.
through the mesh.
No, let's say you have kale, you want to clean that, right? So you use that mesh to tell you, to give you an indication, is this infested or not? If you find a lot of bugs, you're not going to eat them. Same thing with the raisins. You check the raisins. If you see a lot of bugs coming up, don't deal with it because there's a lot of bugs. But if you see it's completely clean, or you find one, so then it tells you that the thing is very clean and you don't have to worry that much anymore. So you find one, clean it again. You don't find anything, you know that that's good enough. Baruch.